Hi guys, and many thanks for joining me. If you are new to my channel, hi, I'm Kat and I like to talk about crimes, investigations, missing people, conspiracy theories and everything related. Please don't forget to hit that subscribe button below, also hit the notification bell so you are the first one to know about any new videos I upload. And for my subscribers, I would like to thank you so much for your continuous support and for all those lovely comments. Thank you. Today, I want to talk to you about Goncalo Amaral's book, Verdade Da Mentira, Maddie, The Truth of the Lie. But before we get started, here is the disclaimer. I do not mean to be disrespectful to anyone I talk about in this video. The video is for educational and entertainment purposes only, and the information I have in the video is from the internet. I gather all this information together and I compile them in a video. Thank you. Goncalo Amaral's book was launched on 24th of July 2008 in Lisbon. And because it's a very detailed book and I always like to be thorough with my videos, I decided to split this book into two videos. So you'll have part 1 and part 2. Otherwise, this video, I'm afraid, would be too long and you might get bored, so I would rather do that. And guess what? I am so happy to have my hands on his book. There it is. I actually have the book. I managed to get hold of it. Although being in the UK, this book is really hard to come by, and as far as I understand, Goncalo Amaral tried to find a publisher in the UK to publish his book, but no publisher accepted in fear of upsetting the McCanns. The Truth of the Lie is published throughout Europe, but not in the UK. As we know, the McCanns took Amaral to court over his book, and after 8 years of a long court battle, the McCanns were defeated and Amaral won. Allegedly, they did threaten anyone selling his book in the UK with legal action. However, I'm not quite sure if there are really any legal grounds to do this. It is freedom of expression, freedom of speech, and this is precisely how he won the libel case. Now, before I dig into the book, I just want to say how sorry I am for Goncalo Amaral. The McCanns, they did everything possible to destroy his life and his reputation, and this man dedicated himself day and night into investigating what happened to Madeleine McCann. He stayed away from his family, he stayed away from his kids, and this is how he's repaid. Not only that, but the McCanns wanted Amaral and his wife Sophia to execute a separation of assets so that Amaral would have enough goods to pay up damages claim. And this meant that Amaral and Sophia would have to separate, but obviously they both refused. In July 2009, the injunction requested by the McCanns to Amaral Books was granted. And at the time, Maddie's parents got his book authorship, half of his retirement pension, and his share of a rural house in Ohio. Now, as far as I understand, but please don't quote me on that, Kate and Jerry McCann, as it seems, still have around 3,000 copies of Amaral's book, which they still haven't released back to him. I mean, I read this somewhere. I didn't look too much into it, so honestly, I'm not quite sure if it's true or not. The book, I have the book. Now, let's jump to the book. Ready? The book starts off in February 2008, 9 months after Maddie's disappearance. Goncalo Amaral receives a phone call from Alipio Ribeiro, and he tells Amaral they were premature in making the McCanns arguidos. Amaral is really surprised. I mean, Ribeiro, he knew from the beginning about the decision and he did agree. So now he's wondering, is Ribeiro planning to end the investigation? Goncalo Amaral had a feeling the investigation was dead from the day he was removed, and his feeling only intensifies with the National Director's statement. And now I want to read to you a quote from the book. I feel it. With that television statement, the National Director has the intention of preparing public opinion for the inevitable. That is to say, the end of the investigation and the closing of the case. During the investigation, the Portuguese police, they actually welcomed the help of the British police, so much so that the PJs, they had a crisis room and a room next to it for the British police. But more weird was the fact that as soon as the McCanns were made arguidos, they left Portugal, and with them all the British police officers in Portugal. It does make me wonder that this was not so much about Maddie, but really more about the McCanns. It seems that as soon as the McCanns left Portugal, the British police didn't seem interested anymore in the investigation or in finding Madeleine in Portugal. Like, you know, they would say, oh, you know what, they are leaving. We can go now as well. We protected them, they are safe, and they will be safe in Britain, so there's nothing else for us to do here anymore. This is how it seems to me, really. This case should have been simply about a missing child, but it turned into questioning the Portuguese justice, the PJ, and the cooperation between two countries that share one of the oldest alliances in the world. And now I'm going to read you another quote from the book. I love this book. For me, the investigation came to an end on October the 2nd, 2007, the date on which there seems to have been a new English ultimatum. Incidentally, on the same day that the Treaty of Lisbon was being discussed. The Treaty of Lisbon. Politics. That's interesting. But was it coincidence? Really, in my opinion, I think this is highly unlikely. Gordon Brown took part in that Treaty of Lisbon discussion in October 2007, and I really do believe that it all started with him. The McCanns were made suspects, and obviously someone had to stop the investigation and save their asses. And who better than their friend Gordon Brown, right? I am going now to give you a brief history of the Lisbon Treaty, which will help to put in context the Gordon Brown connection. The Lisbon Treaty started as a constitutional project at the end of 2001, European Council Declaration on the Future of the European Union, or Laeken Declaration, and was allowed and was followed up in 2002 and 2003 by the European Convention, which drafted the treaty establishing a constitution for Europe. The process leading to the Lisbon Treaty is a result of the negative outcome of two referenda on the constitutional treaty in May and June 2005, in response to which the European Council decided to have a 2-year period of reflection. Finally, on the basis of the Berlin Declaration of March 2007, the European Council of 21st to 23rd of June 2007 adopted a detailed mandate for a subsequent intergovernmental conference under the Portuguese presidency. The IGC concluded its work in October 2007, and the treaty was signed at the European Council of Lisbon on 13th of December 2007 and has been ratified by all member states. And here is another thing. José Sócrates, Prime Minister of Portugal, at the time acted as a president in office of the Council of the European Union for the second half of 2007. In October 2007, a 2-day European summit is taking place in Portugal, where Gordon Brown and José Sócrates are both present. They talk briefly about Madeleine McCann's case, and they agree there should be the closest possible cooperation between Portuguese and British police in the investigation. Earlier in July, however, Gordon Brown thanked the Portuguese premier for his help in the search for Madeleine. Now, that's that. That's done with. But let's say, hypothetically, Gordon Brown is pressuring Socrates into stopping the investigation, into stopping the police from considering the parents suspects. And keep watching, because this will get even more interesting. Goncalo Amaral was removed from the investigation and he was replaced with Paolo Rebello. In the media is mentioned that he got removed because of his criticizing of the British police. According to Amaral's book, however, something else happened. Monday, 1st of August 2007. In the evening, Amaral, while driving, receives a call from a private number. The journalist on the line is asking him to comment on the subject of the email he received the same day at work from the officials, check this out, from the officials at Buckingham Palace, to inform them that a little girl, Madeleine, has disappeared from a hotel complex situated in Lisbon? That's what the email said, situated in Lisbon. So Amaral receives this email in August, 2 months after Maddie's disappearance, from Praia da Luz. But why say that the girl disappeared from Lisbon? I mean, I think that if officials at Buckingham Palace, which I think that it was from Prince Charles' side, that email from officials from Prince Charles. Anyway, let's get back to it. I mean, if officials from Buckingham Palace do send an email to the police, one would assume they would have the facts right before sending it, right? So this is really weird. So according to them, Madeleine disappeared from a hotel in Lisbon. Tired after a really hard day at work, driving in a raging storm, Amaral loses his cool on the phone with the reporter. And he replies that the message is of no interest and that it would be better for the English police to occupy themselves with the Portuguese investigation. And then he hangs up the phone. As soon as he finishes the conversation, he realizes the mistake he's made, and this would cost him his career. Amaral realized he spoke unfairly of the British police, and he is at this point quite certain he triggered a diplomatic incident, and as soon as his words are made public, he risks not being able to direct the investigation. And he's right. He is right. But let's get back to the previous night. This will prove really interesting. During Saturday night, his dog was very agitated and this dog wouldn't stop barking. And now I want to get back to a quote from his book. I made so many notes here. Look, it's all scribbled. All scribbled. And I'm gonna try to find now the quote I was going to read for you. I don't actually have any system for organization, unfortunately. I need to find one. Oh, there it is, finally. During the night of Saturday into Sunday, please pay attention to this because it's really important. Our dog does not stop barking. I go out, but I see nothing and nobody that could get him so worked up. He then howls by the door. I don't know what's going on, but being on my own with my daughter, I won't say her name, sorry, but Amaral mentions her name in the book, but I don't want to say her name, so I'm just going to refer to her as his daughter. I decide to stay close to her indoors and not let my anxiety show. The next day, I still don't understand what could have upset the dog so much. My daughter, anxious, wants at all costs to see the neighbors, but they haven't returned. So he is with his daughter in the house, in the same house where she was born in, with which she does have quite a special connection, and she also loves being there. She also loves spending time with her neighbors, a retired couple who found their peaceful refuge there. On Saturday, throughout the day, she keeps going to knock on the neighbor's door, but they are not home. On Monday evening, after the whole reporter conversation blunder, Amaral gets home at last. He visits his neighbors and he realizes why his dog was so agitated during the night. His neighbor's house has been broken into. What's weird is that the thieves left a lot of valuable objects behind and nothing was missing, apart from a briefcase which contained documents. This is so strange. And Amaral says in his book, deep down, I can't help thinking that perhaps they mistook their target. And honestly, since I've been reading that, I've been thinking about the same thing as well. Can it really be a coincidence that his neighbor's house is broken into and only a briefcase of documents is stolen and everything else valuable is left behind? It is quite possible that the target was actually Amaral's house and they wanted the briefcase of documents that he has. But in regards to what, really? Maddie's case? And if that's the case, then someone must have seen Amaral's briefcase and someone must have known he would take it with him at home. But then, as more as I think about it, it must have been someone active in the investigation or someone in close proximity to Amaral on a daily basis. Someone who was close enough to be able to see all the goings of the case day in and day out. Someone who was maybe placed to keep an eye on the whole investigation. What do you guys think? Is it just a coincidence that his neighbor's house was broken into? Please let me know your opinion in the comments below. The next morning, after Amaral's heated phone conversation, he sees on the front page of the newspapers the same phrase he came up with on the phone with the reporter, which was then transformed into a long interview, typical of the press really. In the same afternoon, at around 2 p.m, Amaral receives the news. And those are not good news. And I will refer back to the same book of Amaral's. The national director has sent a fax to the Portimao DIC. In it, he stipulates the end of my assignment and requests my return to Faro. Today, October the 2nd, is my 48th birthday. This is not the present I wanted, but one that I was expecting. Basically, this brings to an end a campaign of defamation and insults that I have been the target of since the start of this case. The whole thing orchestrated and amplified by the British media. The strategy is simple: call into question the investigation and those who lead it, and at the same time present Portugal as a third world country with a legal system and police force worthy of the Middle Ages. And wasn't he right? Because this is what's been in the news always about the Portuguese police, that they are not able to carry on the investigation, that they have not been doing anything. Yeah, he was right. Portuguese police was portrayed in the media, in the news, everywhere around the world as incompetent. And according to a British correspondent, the Prime Minister Gordon Brown personally called Stuart Pryor to ask for confirmation of Amaral's dismissal. How curious this is. Why would the British Prime Minister be interested in a Portuguese official? There's plenty of rumors going around, according to Amaral, that signing the Treaty of Lisbon was dependent of his dismissal. This is something to think about. And in a way, I really think that these rumors, they are more than just rumors. So let's get back to José Sócrates. We know that he was the Prime Minister of Portugal at the time of Maddie's disappearance. And in the same year, for the second half of the year, he also became President in office of the Council of the European Union. This role is assigned on a rotational basis, the President being changed every 6 months, until later when there would be a decision to keep the same President for a full term. And this is taken from Wikipedia. From 1975 to 2009, the head of the European Council was an unofficial position, often referred to as the President in Office, held by the head of state or government of the member state holding the semi-annually rotating presidency of the Council of the European Union at any given time. However, since the 2007 Treaty of Lisbon, Article 15 of Treaty on European Union states that the European Council appoints a full-time president for a 2.5-year term, with the possibility of renewal once. Appointments, as well as the removal of incumbents, requires a double majority support in the European Council. After the discussion of the Treaty of Lisbon took place in October, it was officially signed on 13th of December 2007 in Lisbon, Portugal. Representatives from 27 member states were present and signed. But check this out. There is always something there. Prime Minister Gordon Brown was not present to sign in the main ceremony. He only signed a few hours later after the other delegates. Now he says that he couldn't be present because he was required to appear before a committee of British MPs. My honest opinion, however, I think, and it's my opinion, I think he blackmailed José Sócrates or pressured him, whichever word you want to use. Brown probably told him in those conversations they had about Maddie's case in October that if he doesn't drop the investigation, or more likely the investigation into the McCann's guilt and suspicions, Brown won't be signing the Treaty of Lisbon. Simple. That's all he needed to say. It's quite possible, and this can also explain why he didn't sign at the same time with the other delegates. Brown seemed to be reluctant in signing. He was probably waiting on Sócrates to do what he's told, waiting on proof that really it was done. Needless to say, there were politicians not very happy with the way Brown handled the signing of the treaty. Oh, quite honestly, I wouldn't be happy either. He behaved like being above everybody else, like it's a true privilege having him to sign this treaty. But I think that was just a show. I think he indeed had a hidden agenda, and I really do feel that this was Maddie's investigation. Monica Frassoni, an Italian politician, states in a debate held on 18th of December 2007. On the subject of the Treaty of Lisbon, I think that what Prime Minister Gordon Brown did was a scandal, and the way he treated all of you and also all of us, I think, was equally scandalous. We are moving on to chapter 2, the holidays of Madeleine Beth McCann. Chapter 2 in Goncalo Amaral's book takes us to the beginning of Maddie's holiday. They arrive at Faro around 2 p.m. They take the minibus to travel 70 kilometers to the Ocean Club Resort in Praia da Luz, not so far from Lagos. They are accompanied, as we all know, by the Payne family, Diana Webster, Fiona's mother, whilst the other members arrive earlier at around 1 p.m. David Payne is the organizer of this trip. The couples have spent their holidays together for quite a few years. Whilst Kate was pregnant with the twins in January 2005, they stayed in Lanzarote in the Canaries. In September 2003, the McCanns and their friends Matthew and Rachel Oldfield, Russell O'Brien and Jane Tanner spent a week in Umbria, Italy, to attend David and Fiona's wedding. In September 2005, Kate, Jerry and their 2-year-old daughter Madeleine went to Majorca, in Spain, for a few days with the Paynes and other friends. On arrival at the Ocean Club, the group is assigned the apartments, as we all know. Apartment 5A, Kate and Jerry McCann with Madeleine, Sean and Emily. Then apartment 5B, next to apartment 5A is Matthew Oldfield and Rachel with their child. Apartment 5D, just like 5A and 5B, also on the ground floor, Russell O'Brien and Jane Tanner with their 2 kids. Apartment 5H, which is on the first floor, David and Fiona Payne with their kids and Diane Webster. The resort complex is not a private area. The various buildings are spread throughout the village. The roads are public. Some of the properties are separated from each other by 2 kilometers, as is the case with the Millennium Restaurant. There's no CCTV or private security, and access to the leisure areas is not controlled either. You need to please keep this in mind, and remember, there is no CCTV or private security, because this will prove very important further on in the video. Now, what I want to do is I want to read a paragraph from Amaral's book, which I find quite interesting and will also help us make sense of the surroundings and topography of the place, if you will. If you take the road that links the Luz church to the beach, you notice on your left the ruins of the Roman thermal baths. Through their cellar run numerous tunnels, which for more than 50 years have been used by children to reach the beach. Okay, so considering it's me, and if I would be reading too much into this, I would say that those tunnels, they are still accessible, right? The children use them to reach the beach. But what if this area was used to hide a body or bury a body? This makes me wonder. It does. The McCanns and the group have a routine put in place. At around 9 a.m. children go to the crèche. At around 12:30 parents pick up the children for lunch. Then at around 2:30 in the afternoon children are going back to the crèche, and then at around 5:30 they are being picked up from the crèche. At around 8:30 in the evening parents meet for dinner at the tapas. Children stay alone in the apartment sleeping. What a relief for the parents. Seeing this routine again, I can't help it, and I have to say, really, I do have to say, and I think I'm just gonna repeat this over and over and over. These children are left with strangers 80% of the time, on a holiday which is supposed to be a family holiday. I cannot understand for the life of me how these parents would think that this is okay. They should have just left these kids back in the UK. If they wanted time for themselves, they just shouldn't have brought the kids with them. So, from Sunday, the 29th of April, Madeleine won't be going back to the Millennium Restaurant, probably because it's quite far and the parents have to carry the twins there and back. So from this point onwards, the breakfast is taken in the apartment with the family, with stuff they bought from the Baptista supermarket. I wonder if this is the same supermarket where allegedly Kate was spotted buying cleaning products and bleach. I can't really still get my head around that, really. If that would be true, why would someone on holiday buy cleaning products? That's just beyond me, really. There's a reason it's a holiday resort. I mean, really, you're on holiday, you don't clean. At least that time when you're on holiday, you don't need to clean. The cleaners, they clean the apartment for you. So, again, it doesn't make sense. On Tuesday, May the 1st, Madeleine cries for her dad for more than an hour in the company of her brother and sister. Back in the UK, Maddie's parents, they have a medical chart for Madeleine with her sleep issues, where she would wake up every few hours in the night, so she did have an issue with her sleep. But this will be revealed later in the book in more detail. So, let me ask you this. Although the parents said the sleep issues have been rectified, which I don't believe for a second, why leave your kids alone to sleep, especially Maddie, when you know that she has issues sleeping in a foreign country, in an unfamiliar place, where she could wake up at any time and wander off? Even more interesting, why was Maddie the only one crying but not the twins, if they were in the same room? Surely a toddler crying constantly for more than an hour, even heard by Miss Fan, the neighbor from above, would wake up the twins being in the same room. And logically, they would wake up scared of the crying and then they would cry as well. It's just what toddlers do when they are not happy with something. They cry. So why didn't they wake up as well? Thinking. And what if, for example, Kate was in the apartment and that's why Maddie was crying? Did she do something to Maddie to make her cry like that for more than an hour and cry for daddy for help? And maybe the twins didn't cry because she was there comforting them, but not Maddie. Let me tell you something. A child doesn't cry for no reason for more than an hour. That's pretty sure. And I'm also sure, in my opinion, that something definitely happened there that night. Something happened there. Thursday, the 3rd of May. Kate picks the 3 children up from the crochet at 5:30 p.m. and they head for the apartment. But we also have to remember what Amaral said. There was no CCTV, no surveillance, and no private security. Which makes me wonder this. Did Kate really pick Madeleine up on Thursday from the crochet? Was it Madeleine that she picked that day? Amaral receives the news of the child's disappearance at midnight, and before heading home, he makes sure to call the police on duty to check all the urgent measures are underway. The head of the guard already alerted the police authorities at Faro Airport and the control post set up on the Guadiana Bridge, the river on the frontier between Portugal and Spain. And this was all done on the same night of Maddie's disappearance, regardless of how the British media is portraying the incompetence of the Portuguese police. But the reports leave a lot to be desired. A concise report by the investigator and the forensic police is accompanied by a lot of photos taken inside and outside apartment 5A. A lot of people were already there and in place, but strangely enough, there were no people in the photos. And the report also mentions the twins were asleep in their cots. But there's no evidence of that. If you look at the photos, you can see the empty cots, and literally empty, with only the mattresses on. They don't have any sheets, they don't have any blankets. They have been removed. They've been removed. But yet, the police officers report the twins were sleeping in their cots. Which makes me question this again, and yet again I question it. Have the twins been put in their cots before the police arrive so that they see the twins are sleeping there? So that the version of the events makes sense, the versions they've been telling to the police. This is so weird. On the same night, arriving home, Amaral makes tons of phone calls and sends a message to the director of Faro Department of Criminal Investigation. The police response is fundamental. The first 72 hours are essential. On the 4th of May, Amaral realizes something's not right in the account of the events. At this point, he wants to know everything. And I'll jump on the book again to read you a paragraph from there. We need information about the parents and their friends, to know who they are, what they do, if they have problems in their country, if the children were victims of abuse, if the family, neighbors, friends could have noticed any suspicious behavior, what are their jobs, if they work full-time, etc. Is any member of their family depressed or suffered from depression in the past? Do the couple maintain good relationships? Are they implicated in serious litigation? Do they have any enemies? And for what reason? So now Amaral calls Glenn Powers, the English liaison officer in Portugal, to inform him of the events and to request response to their requests. Chief Inspector Tavares de Almeida, since dawn, is following through with the first measures taken. He should have been going on holiday really, but with the severity of the situation, he decides to put it off. All the Portuguese police is on alert. The Interpol is as well. The National Guard, supported by civilians, started with the searches. The examination of the scene was carried out in difficult circumstances. When the police arrived there, a lot of people were coming and going, friends, family, employees, including dogs and the National Guard. The scene might have been contaminated, and at this point, Amaral is wondering if the contamination was in fact done on purpose. CCTV cameras on motorways, including one leading to Lagos and another linking Lagos with Spain, will be viewed, along with any recordings from hotels, banks, pharmacies, supermarkets, service stations. So everywhere they can find CCTV, they will have a look at it. The Spanish Customs Service is being asked to be vigilant at the two ports with links to Morocco, Tarifa and Algeciras. They may contact with the marinas and the maritime police. They also need video recordings and registers of boats entering and leaving in the last few days. So in fact they check everything. This is how incompetent they are, as the British media is saying. And check this out. At 10 in the morning, 12 hours after Maddie's disappearance, the British consul to Portimao visits the Department of Criminal Investigation. He is informed of everything, including the next stages considered, but he doesn't seem satisfied. Someone hears him talking on the phone, saying the judiciary police have done nothing. What a blow. What a blow, really. But the question is, why is he lying? What is he hiding? For what purpose is he saying that, really? Is he trying to discredit the police from the beginning? That's really strange. Goncalo Amaral and his team are not getting any information from Great Britain. No reports on the McCanns, their children or their friends, which is not helping at all. And now I want to go back to this beautiful book with another paragraph. We would like, for example, to know if Madeline was adopted by the couple, which would allow us to eliminate the hypothesis of parental abduction. If the information is not reaching us, it's obviously reaching the British ambassador. We are astonished by this prompt mobilization of the English authorities. So, who are the McCanns? Who are their friends? We don't need diplomatic intervention. What we would like is answers to the questions sent to the British police authorities by Glen Power, which obviously were not received. The search continues. With the help of a helicopter, interviews of holidaymakers and resorts employees multiply. The Deputy Director of Faro Judiciary Police joins Amaral and the team, and they go to check on the operations, where they are met with media en masse. A lot of media. It seems that the McCann's friends reported Maddie's disappearance to the press before they reported to the police. Of course they did, of course. Now let's have a look at the TAPA statements and the first inconsistencies on May the 4th. It's important to question everyone, separate them and take the statements all at once in case Maddie's abduction was a mistake and possibly another child was the target. Logistically, however, they can't all be heard at once because someone has to stay with the kids. But again, why not use the crochet until the questioning is done? I mean, they've been using the crochet for the twins even after Maddie's disappearance, so now why not use it on that occasion? If it helps the investigation, right? But no, of course, if it doesn't help them, then, you know, it can't be done. The morning of 4th of May, only Jerry, Jane Tanner and Matthew Oldfield are interviewed, and inconsistencies already arise. Jane sees possible abductor. Jerry doesn't see abductor, although he's there at the same time with Jeremiah. And the rest of the group is interviewed in the afternoon of 4th of May, giving too much time for the others to learn the questions or answers of the first. And the translation is not helping either. It gives them too much time to come up with the answer. The parents, at this point, they insist on the abduction and they even force this idea. And some other inconsistencies here, as we all know them already, but I feel like they need to be told again. Jerry says he left the front door locked and the apartment was secure. Kate says she entered via the back door. She confirms that the bedroom window was wide open and the blinds up. The checking was defined as follows. At 21:05, Jerry McCann checks. All is fine with the children. Between 21:10 and 21:15, Jane Tanner sees the alleged abductor carrying the child. At 21:30, Matthew Oldfield enters apartment 5A, but not the bedroom. He only sees the twins. At 10 o'clock in the evening, Kate raises the alarm. Madeleine is missing. But, question. If the window was wide open when Matthew Oldfield checked, how did he not notice? How? Matthew Oldfield says the bedroom door was half open. Kate says it was wide open. And unexpectedly, some more inconsistencies arise. Kate, when she talks about the person who allegedly took Madeleine, she refers to information that Jane has provided. Yet, at the same time, Kate describes someone completely different than Jane's person. Jane says light trousers and shoulder-length hair. Kate says long hair and jeans. Jane makes herself completely available and testifies several times. To the police, Jerry says Jane told him about midnight May the 4th, that she saw an unknown individual, 30 to 40 years old, light trousers, dark hair, going up the street. The GNR affirms that the parents immediately raised the abduction theory because Jane saw this man carrying a child. The GNR statements have this description: man, light trousers, 1.78 meters height, dark shirt, and carrying a child that appeared to be wearing pajamas. Nothing else about the child, pajamas, or the man. By 11:30, 4th of May, Jane is already giving another description, more detailed this time. A dark-skinned man, between 35 to 40 years old, thin, 1.7 meters tall, dark thick shoulder-length hair, linen trousers of beige or gold color, a duffy type of jacket, though not as thick, with classic shoes, walking quickly and carrying a child laying across his two arms in front of his chest. By his dress, he didn't look like a tourist and didn't seem like a tourist because he was so bundled up. The child appeared to be sleeping, though she only saw the legs. The feet were bare and the pajamas looked like cotton, a light color, maybe white or pink, with a design perhaps, though she wasn't sure, perhaps with flowers. Jane says she would recognize the man from the back and by the way he walked. Jane's testimony surprises everyone. She said she didn't know what Madeleine was wearing, but how could she not? 14 hours had passed since the disappearance and Jane's version had been heard by many. Even Gerald mentioned her testimony, but Jane says she only talked to Gerald without giving any details and only after she had talked to the police. But Kate had immediately on the night of 3rd of May given a description of what Madeleine was wearing. Then how could Jane the next day not know this when she talked to the police? Oh well, I'll tell you why. In my opinion, they didn't get their story straight from the beginning and she kept on, going around. She kept on making mistakes, Jane, and then she kept on rectifying those mistakes so that the mistakes would match with their line of events. Yeah. Everyone that night who helped in the searches was looking for a 3 to 4 year old girl, barefoot, dressed in PJs, with a top and light colored bottoms, with a pink animal design. It's very surprising at this point that Jane says she didn't have this information when she spoke to the police the next day, especially as she was making herself the most important witness in this phase of the investigation. I'll tell you what, without her statement and without her being such an important witness, there wouldn't be any theory of the abduction because no one would have seen the abductor. So Jane's role, in my view, was very important to keep the story together. Friday, the 4th of May, at 8 p.m., Amaral walks around Praia da Luz to take note of the activity in the village at dinner time and to check the street lighting. He stays there until around 10 p.m. and it's noticeable, although with police officers and journalists there is very little movement, and the place where the abductor was, according to Jane's statement, is dimly lit. So how did Jane manage to describe him so well? The streets were deserted. So why would the abductor walk around like that at the risk of being seen? If indeed the abduction would be planned, then he would surely take the time to study the surroundings, the topography, the habit of the family, and if he wasn't from that place, then he would probably come by car and hide it in a dark corner. But the darkest area is situated in the opposite direction to that indicated by Jane Tanner. So did she really see the man going towards east? Wouldn't he rather be going towards west to reach the road running west out of the village towards Sagres and east toward Lagos? And then there's also another question. According to his statement, Jerry went in his apartment through the front door. But why? When the back door is closer to the restaurant and doesn't need a key. The parents keep saying the back door was visible from the restaurant and no one could walk without being noticed. But according to Amaral, that's not true. And I'll refer again to his book and I'll give you a quote from there. But that's false, as we were easily able to verify. At night, with the surrounding vegetation and the opaque plastic tarpaulin that protects the dining room of the restaurant, visibility is nil. Anybody could have got into the McCann's apartment without being noticed, particularly as most of the guests had their back to the apartment. So this shows how important it must have been for the McCanns to get their story straight. Although they were not facing the apartment, they were saying they were facing the apartment, so that their story makes sense and so that they are deemed like the responsible parents and always checking on the apartment. Saturday, May the 5th. Throughout the day, apartments are visited in the resort and surrounding area. Investigators search more than 400 apartments with no results whatsoever. At this point, the McCanns are living with the pains. Amaral wants to search the accommodation of the family friends to try and get Madeleine's clothes, especially what she was wearing on May the 3rd at 5:35 p.m. when she returned from the day center with her mom and the twins. But this option is not supported. The British ambassador meets with the team directing the investigation, and it seems the political and diplomatic people really are trying to prevent the PJ from doing their job. Amaral didn't find it normal at all that parents of a missing child would engage press attachés to deal with their relations with the media. Well, I have to say he didn't find it normal because it's just not normal. I don't find it normal either. Are you concerned in finding your daughter or how your image is portrayed in the media? Seriously. This was not a thing about finding Madeleine anymore, in my opinion. On the 4th of May, the parents allowed the PJ to check their phone calls. And there is a reason why they did that. I've already covered this in my previous video, but I found something else which I don't think I mentioned previously. And it's quite interesting, so check this out. On Kate's phone, Jerry's number is logged. She called him on May the 3rd at 11:17 p.m. But on Jerry's phone, however, there is no record of the call. How surprising is that? This to me is a clear indication that calls have been deleted, in my opinion, obviously. I don't find that there can be another explanation. In my opinion, I don't think that he could have deleted all those calls by mistake. No, it's really hard to believe that, really. Amaral and his team, they considered the possibility to tap the couples and their friends' phones in the hopes of getting more details. However, later they realized the English Secret Service already placed their calls under surveillance. If that was indeed true, the Portuguese police was never informed. Amaral and the team are getting information about someone in Sagres caught in the act of taking photos of a few children on Maretta Beach. In particular of a girl aged 4 with blue eyes who looks just like Madeleine. Her dad noticed that, and he is saying his photographer tried to kidnap his daughter on the 26th of April in Sagres. He allegedly left in a hired car with a woman. His description reminds us of Jane Tanner's statement. Very surprising. The police manages to track the hire car and get information about the photographer. He's Polish and traveled to Portugal with his wife. Sadly, they left on the 5th of May, taking with them their camera. Amaral asks the German police through Interpol to monitor them as soon as they arrive in Berlin. But in the end, nothing came of it. And I will end this video with a quote from the United Nations Declaration of the Rights of the Child, 1959. The child shall, wherever possible, grow up in the care and under the responsibility of his parents, and in any case in an atmosphere of affection and of moral and material security. Let's start part 2 of Maddie, the Truth of the Lie. I want to start off with behind the scenes of the investigation, which is the crisis unit. Chief Inspector Tavares de Almeida was the person keeping the crisis unit operational throughout the investigation until the departure of the last English police officer, when the McCanns returned to England, which seems like it wasn't necessary any longer to continue the investigation into the country where the disappearance took place. The police involved in the investigation are living in an apartment in the town center, which quickly becomes overcrowded. We have investigators sleeping on the sofa, others are sleeping on the floor, others are sharing beds, and even with the lack of sleep, they are ready to carry on each morning. It's Almeida who every morning at 6 o'clock opens the local office and only leaves it after midnight. In the office, the data is being centralized, emails, phone calls, communications from police officers, and this information is being analyzed so that they can choose the ones of interest. Almeida prepares documents, many which need translating. This is a massive operation with a lot of effort put in. Amaral at this point becomes an absent father. He starts distancing himself from his family to protect them from the media pressure. However, in February 2008, he already lives alone. He now feels betrayed by the institution where he dedicated himself for more than a quarter of a century, and nothing seems to justify what had happened to him, and his family clearly didn't deserve that. Almeida and the whole police force involved in the investigation feel revolted, and they feel the judiciary police didn't do enough to protect them, and on top of that, they also called into question their reliability. After the national director's statement, Amaral believes there was a rumor the director will be dismissed as well. The judiciary police is in crisis, and this will only be resolved by resignations in the highest spheres of hierarchy. Okay, I am back with the book, and I want to read a paragraph from it. Yeah, this is for my thumbnail. Just give me a second, guys. I actually have a system now. If you look at all the colorful sticky notes here, I have a system now. I found it. How come a criminal investigation, in this case, the research undertaken following the disappearance of a little English girl, could have caused so much upset to Portuguese justice and the judiciary police, and compromised the cooperation that existed for such a long time between the police of the two countries? What are the powers that made the investigation so difficult to the point of stopping it abruptly? In recounting its operation, perhaps a response can be outlined and new light thrown on the events. Police reinforcements arrive from Lisbon. Team from the Central Crime Fighting Directorate with their director are sent. Amaral was not aware of this, however, he welcomes them and their experience. On the 7th of May, English police from Leicestershire arrives. Bob Small, an officer from the Leicestershire police, and his colleague get up to speed with the situation before contacting the couple. Glenn Power, the liaison officer to Portugal, will also be sent packing. And now I want to refer back to the book and I'll read you another paragraph. On May 14th, Kate Healy is indignant about the attitude of the liaison officer, who asks her where her daughter is. Neither she nor her husband accepts anyone doubting their word. The officer will be sent packing, and his colleague too, a week after his arrival. Okay, how can I say this? I really feel that Kate and Jerry's attitude is shocking, to say the least. These parents, they have lost their child in a foreign country, and all these officers came here only to help, but they as well are sent away. Amaral and his team find this really shocking, but the thing is, they didn't find out straight away. The English police didn't even bother telling them. Amaral found out from someone else. Now, as time goes by, Amaral realizes some of the English police officers sent to Portugal are poorly informed of the progress of the investigation. Go figure. Nothing surprising here. One of them, his first time in Portugal, was wearing a green and yellow rubber bracelet inscribed "Look for Madeleine," which he bought for £2, which I assume were made so they can collect more funds for the search for Madeleine. As soon as this police officer gets properly informed and finds out more evidence in the investigation and doubts the theory of the abduction, he takes his bracelet off straight away. So you see, to me, this goes to show that even the British police at one point was reluctant to believe abduction theory. They were very supportive of all the scenarios being investigated by the Portuguese police. Now, in the hopes of retracing the steps Madeleine took, a search operation is set. Sniffer dogs are brought from Lisbon, from the National Republican Guard. But this is an identical operation which already took place on the night of 3rd of May, but the dogs used were from the local police. Okay, now, we really do need to talk about that Calpol theory we keep hearing not hearing, but mostly reading on the internet. There's something really interesting I found online about this actually. As it turns out, in 2007, Johnson & Johnson released Calpol Night. In fact, it was approved for launch in January 2007, and after approval, it became available on prescription. This Calpol indeed contained sedating antihistamines called diphenhydramine hydrochloride, and this has some really dangerous side effects such as drowsiness, blurred vision, dry mouth, nose and throat, among others. We know that at some point Kate admitted she did take to Portugal Calpol, but she insisted it only contained paracetamol and also insisted she didn't give any to Madeleine. Although we know her dad, if I'm not mistaken, said that she used Calpol previously for the kids to help them sleep. Now, paracetamol contained in Calpol does not by any means aid sleep. It's merely a painkilling medicine. But combined with the sedating antihistamines, this for sure would aid sleep. Okay, so let's get back to the theory I mentioned in one of my other videos. Madeleine woke up drowsy, right? climbed on the sofa, she lost her balance, fell, and hit her head to the point it led to her terrible accident. Let's not forget that allegedly a syringe was found in apartment 5A, which could have been used to administer Calpol. And also, let's not forget, Kate is a pediatrician and would know how to administer medication. Maddie is drowsy from the medicine. She could also very well have blurred vision as one of the side effects. It's very possible she suffered an accident and behind that sofa she passed away. Calpol night in June 2007 was deemed unsafe for children under 6 years of age, and this eventually got banned. Paracetamol usually takes around 7 hours to be eliminated from the body. So, if really the parents were asked for the twins to be tested on the same night of Maddie's disappearance, then this could be the reason why they refused. Kate offered the twins to be tested only after 3 months, as she mentions in her book. By that time, she knew there won't be anything found in the toxicology or blood report. She was so clever, but honestly not so clever. During the investigation, a doctor points out to Amaral and his team that Madeleine has a mark in her eye, which is also known as coloboma of the iris, and can be associated with other disorders such as cardiac insufficiency. That's why for Amaral it was very important to find out, so he made request to the British Medical Association, but guess what? They never responded. What a surprise. Coloboma of the iris can also give light sensitivity, which can cause discomfort and affect the vision, and might also give migraines. And pair that with Calpol night, which causes blurred vision and drowsiness, and hypothetically there you have a 3-year-old girl waking up in an apartment alone, looking for her parents, climbing the sofa, falling behind it, and ultimately banging her head in the tile floor. And theoretically, if really indeed she had cardiac insufficiency, Calpol might not have been a good option for Maddie to take. The sedating antihistamines can give heart palpitations and increased heart rate. This can be very well far-fetched. I'm not saying no, but I would rather just get it all out there. I made my research online and all these are from medical websites. But I'm not saying it can also be a possibility. Now, before I move on to Madeleine sighting all around the world, there is one thing I want to mention. There's some images from a CCTV camera captured on the motorway linking Lagos to the Spanish border. The little girl in the images seems to be Madeleine McCann. So, obviously the McCanns are asked to go to Portimao to try and make an identification, right? And there we have again the McCanns. Amaral finds it very, very surprising that when asked, Kate is in fact annoyed and also made uncomfortable by the speed the police car is taking her. This is I can't believe it, really. It's just disgusting. So let me get this straight. So here we have a possible lead of a girl looking just like Madeleine, where police are racing against time to try to identify this little girl before the trail goes cold, before she is gone. But her own mother is frustrated she has to go down to the police station? Really? You have all these police officers, out of courtesy, driving Kate to the police station, and yet she's not happy with the speed of the car. The speed of the police, who just want identification of her own daughter so they can take action as soon as possible. This seriously, this is beyond belief and comprehension. A mother hears her daughter might have been seen on CCTV, but she's annoyed and uncomfortable? Oh, no. I can't believe this. It seems to me as if, at this point, the police is doing more than the parents. It seems to me the police are more excited than the parents that their daughter was potentially spotted. As if the McCanns already know that's impossible. As if Kate didn't really expect to find her daughter. Needless to say, however, the identification turned out negative. And this was not the only time Kate seems annoyed. I remember reading a news article, I think it was, or I don't know, was it something she maybe wrote in her book? Where she criticized the Portuguese police for not being welcoming when she was taken for interrogation. They didn't offer her any biscuits or a drink and they were rude. But my question is, are you at the police station to find your daughter? Or are you at the police station for a tea party? Seriously, these are some really weird behaviors here. Madeleine is spotted all over the world. From the moment Maddie's photo is in the media, her presence is reported to the Portuguese police from all over the world. In Spain, Morocco, all over Europe and even in Latin America. Almost at the same time, she is seen in Zurich and on the corner of a Rio de Janeiro street. May 11th and Morocco. A Norwegian woman allegedly recognizes Madeleine at a petrol station in Marrakech. What's weird is there will be a lot of witness statements from Morocco, and each time she is spotted, she is always barefoot, always in pajamas, and this is the strangest thing ever, really. So let's just say for a moment that she was abducted in her pajamas and barefoot. But how can she be seen wearing exactly the same thing? Logically, if she would have been abducted, then the abductor would definitely change her outfit so she's not easily recognizable anymore. And most certainly she wouldn't be barefoot. Come on, seriously? Which leads me, in all honesty, to believe the sightings in Morocco were, in fact, well, allegedly fake and planned. The fact that Madeleine is seen simultaneously all over the world makes me think that this was done on purpose by someone to further derail and confuse the investigation. But then there's also something else regarding Morocco. A young Spanish woman takes photos from her car of a North African family seen walking along a road. The woman is carrying a girl on her back. Amaral still hasn't seen this photo, and only the next morning he sees it in the press. And now I want to move again to a paragraph from the book. We ask the Chief of Leicestershire Police, Stuart Pryor, where he is up to with it. He explains that the English police, after having seen the photo, immediately submitted it to the McCanns, asking them if they recognized their daughter. To which they replied with a perhaps. Oh, you know, perhaps, maybe, I don't know, I don't care, I'm not interested. Something like that. Incomprehensible to say the least. We are shocked by the behavior of the English, who took that initiative without consulting us, the people responsible for the investigation, which is all the more ludicrous given that the McCanns were already considered as suspects. That way of doing things disrupts the strategy adopted for the investigation, which the Portuguese and the English agreed on. But let me tell you something, this is not the only time or thing the McCanns are in possession of which they shouldn't be as suspects. Amaral recalls he cannot comprehend how the McCanns have access to information which is not made public. The police searched the McCann's house they were occupying. What they found was very indicative of Kate being in mourning. She has like a shrine with Maddie's photos, space between them is a representation of a saint, then a crucifix or a rosary can be seen. I, for one, am not a very religious person, but I do, however, respect everyone's beliefs and religions. I remember, as a child, I used to go to church every Sunday, and after service, we were always lighting up candles to remember our loved ones who passed away. We would say a prayer and then contemplate. The priest, during the service, would dedicate the last words of the service in remembering the ones who passed away, by a way of reading their names out loud. Names would be given by people who had loved ones who passed away. We would also have a holiday once a year in October where we would remember the dead. We would go to the cemetery and light up candles, and if we couldn't attend, then we would keep photos of our loved ones who passed away and light candles by the window. Going back to Kate, she also had a copy of a Bible with a bookmark slipped in it, which opens to the second book of Samuel, chapter 12. I want to read the verses because it will make sense to you what I will say next. I have sinned against the Lord, David said. Nathan replied, the Lord forgives you, you will not die. But because you have shown such contempt for the Lord in doing this, your child will die. Then Nathan went home. The Lord caused the child that Uriah's wife had born to David to become very ill. David prayed to God that the child would get well. He refused to eat anything, and every night he went into his room and spent the night lying on the floor. His court officials went to him and tried to make him get up, but he refused and would not eat anything with them. A week later, the child died, and David's officials were afraid to tell him the news. They said, while the child was living, David wouldn't answer us when we spoke to him. How can we tell him that his child is dead? He might do himself some harm. When David noticed them whispering to each other, he realized that the child had died. So he asked them, is the child dead? Yes, he is, they answered. David got up from the floor, had a bath, combed his hair, and changed his clothes. Then he went and worshipped in the house of the Lord. When he returned to the palace, he asked for food and ate it as soon as it was served. We don't understand this, the officials said to him. While the child was alive, you wept for him and would not eat, but as soon as he died, you got up and ate. Yes, David answered. I did fast and weep while he was still alive. I thought that the Lord might be merciful to me and not let the child die. But now that he is dead, why should I fast? Could I bring the child back to life? I will someday go to where he is, but he can never come back to me. Then David comforted his wife, Bathsheba. He had intercourse with her, and she bore a son, whom David named Solomon. The Lord loved the boy, and commanded the prophet Nathan to name the boy Jedaiah, because the Lord loved him. For David, life had to go on. Okay, thank you for bearing with me. I know it was a bit of a long read, but to put this into context, we know Kate's part of the room it looks sort of like a shrine. Yeah, photos on the table, photos on the wall of Maddie, saints, crucifix, rosaries, Bibles, whatever. On the other hand, Jerry's part of the room is cold. There's no photos of his daughter. He manages here the Madeleine Fund, organizes his agenda and writes his blog, compared to Kate's shrine, where she is clearly in mourning. It's here that the police officers discover, much to their amazement, some books and manuals exclusively intended for police services and government agencies. And these are the books and manuals they found. Missing and Abducted Children, a law enforcement guide to case investigation and program management from the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. Training courses from COP, Serious Organized Crime Agency, Child Exploitation and Online Protection Center. Making Every Child Matter Everywhere. Again, COP, Serious Organized Crime Agency, Child Exploitation and Online Protection Center. Mark Harrison himself is wondering, how can Jerry be in possession of such books? Okay, since we are at the COP subject, the Child Exploitation and Online Protection Center, I want to talk to you a bit about that. Some really interesting information I found online. There is this website called The Wayback Machine. I'm not sure if you've heard of it, but this is such a cool website, really. So what this The Wayback Machine does is, basically, it stores billions of web pages, including those which have been deleted but scanned or crawled, as you might hear it, and they are being added into the archive, right? And in this Wayback Machine, a page was grabbed on the 30th of April 2007 at 11:58:03 from the COP website. Please remember this date, 30th of April, 30 April 2007. Everyone knows, right? Madeleine disappeared on the 3rd of May at around 10 p.m., correct? Okay, so now look at the screen and keep in mind the red circled areas, alright? My question, very simple. Why was the COP advertising Madeleine's disappearance days before she went missing? The page says, help find Madeleine, and the photos of her are before her holiday in Portugal. However, I have to say, this date was later modified, and if you look at it now, the date is changed to the middle of May. So you might say that this is incorrect, or perhaps a mistake, or whatever, I don't know. But let me tell you this, as part of a web page or website or anything like software, online platform and so on, if you wish, phone apps or whatever, you know, everything there on a computer, website, you know, online. There is a code, yeah, which is sort of like the infrastructure of said website or page. And this code doesn't lie, okay? Now, I'm not sure how familiar you are with HTML, but it's clear as day if you look at this photo of the HTML data, which you can easily find with the inspect option from a browser, the date and time when this was published on the COP website. And the date and time is 30th of April 2007 at 11:58:03. Who can have access to modifying a web crawling result? You tell me, cause I have no idea. But my husband is a bit more knowledgeable than me with this, you know, HTML and web things and stuff. Not getting into more details. And I'm asking him, right? So I ask him, who can actually physically delete a crawling result which is indexed automatically and no one should have access to it? Without him knowing why I'm asking him about it, the first answer he gives is that of a hacker. I'm like, okay, a hacker, got it. Apart from a hacker, let's put for a moment to aside the hacker idea. Apart from a hacker, who can do it? And he tells me that only the FBI or the Secret Services or a government agency can modify this data. Okay, seriously, I'm getting chills. Seriously, I am. I didn't want to believe that someone so high like the FBI or the Secret Services or MI5 would be involved. But in a way, it does make sense, because I don't see any other way or reason, or how can I say, this cover-up, it just goes too high up. It goes too high up for something bigger than that not to be covered up. I believe, it's really my opinion, that something much more than pedophilia or child trafficking is going on here. I won't be getting into more detail now, but I will be covering this theory in another video later on. Let's move on. Now, I want to talk to you about a ransom email. I'm not sure if you've heard of it or if you didn't, but this is really interesting. Nothing else to say apart from interesting. Did you know that allegedly Kate and Jerry McCann received an email asking for money in return for Madeleine? Yes, as it seems. Amaral mentions in his book that on the 14th of June, the parents are contacted by a stranger who says he has information on where Madeleine is. At the advice of the investigators, the McCanns set up an email address so that they can maintain contact easily. Whilst in contact, the stranger asks for $2 million with an advance of 500,000 euros, and the money has to be sent to an acquaintance of his in the Netherlands. Remember, Netherlands. At this point, the Dutch courts and police are asked for assistance in locating and finding out who the individual is. The McCanns are anxious. They believe the emails are genuine and they respond so very quickly, so they must have already the $2 million in place. The McCanns and Madeleine used to live in the Netherlands before the twins, so they are questioning if perhaps someone they knew there would do this. And I'm questioning as well if perhaps they were the ones who paid someone to send a ransom email to further derail the investigation. I don't know. My opinion. The Portuguese, Dutch and English police are negotiating with the informant. Inspectors, negotiators, members of Scotland Yard and Leicestershire Police are waiting for a contact to establish the place and conditions of handing over the money. Tension is at its height. All police officers holding their breath, and they wait and wait. But Jerry McCann, he's so relaxed that he's even playing trivia on the internet, talking about rugby and football with the British police whilst licking on a lollipop. Oh, bless you, Jerry. He even laughed with his friends who called him. And at this point, the police officers are yet again in another shock of Jerry's behavior. His nonchalance surprised even the English police officers. 2 days later, the Dutch police arrest the informant. And it turned out he didn't have any information on Madeleine. Go figure. We all knew that already, didn't we? Very suspicious behavior. As if Jerry knew they won't find anything and it will lead to a dead end. But perhaps his coldness throughout the investigation, which he didn't lose, even made one of the English police officers say, "Don't forget, he's a heart surgeon and he cuts people open before breakfast." Before I end this video, there's 2 more points I'd really like to talk about. the English Forensic Science Service Lab in Birmingham. All the samples and traces lifted from apartment 5A, which I won't get into more detail now because I've already covered this in a previous video, are sent to the lab in the UK. These samples are not sent there by chance, but this is one of the most reliable lab in the UK, or let's just say was before Madeleine's investigation, allegedly. The lab also has cutting-edge technology, and the results wouldn't be able to be contested by the British, considering this is one of their labs, okay? The samples collected after the visit of the dogs are entrusted to this lab, and to avoid any leaks of information, Stuart Pryor is the liaison between the lab and the Portuguese police. A few days after the samples are sent, the PJ are informed the DNA of the blood found in the boot of the McCann's car match 50% with Jerry's DNA, which means the blood is one of his children. In September, just before the McCanns are placed under investigation, Stuart Pryor travels to Portimao to present one of the two preliminary reports from the lab. The analysis of the traces of blood lifted from 5A, according to the lab, proved inconclusive, because the samples have very little information when the DNA comes from more than one person. But all the confirmed DNA components match the DNA of Maddie's profile. The second report arrives the same day the McCanns are brought for the interrogation. This one gives more importance to the DNA profile lifted from the blood off the floor, but there's no other mention whatsoever of the samples lifted from the car, as if they never existed. Maybe the lab just said, oh, you know what, let's just forget about those samples because we don't need them, they don't need to know anything. Some light on the issue. According to Amaral's book, either the LCN technique is not reliable, or it's just simply much easier to explain Madeleine's DNA found in the apartment than in the car hired 24 days after her disappearance. Oh well, of course it's much easier to justify the findings in the apartment. Maddie was there, so logically DNA of hers would be found there, right? However, how can you explain her DNA was in the car boot without incriminating yourself? How? What parent puts their kids in the boot of the car and the kid bleeds, right? There would have to be a much sinister reason behind it. Stuart contacts the FSS, the lab, at the Portuguese police insistence, and asks if they take the PJ as idiots, saying that in the UK with less than these results someone would have been already arrested. The FSS still didn't give the results of the analysis on the hair found in the boot, and they won't either. The PJ never found out who the hair belongs to, even though they had the DNA profile of the whole family, including the twins. It seems to me as if the lab didn't want to give too much information about the analysis, like they knew if they do, someone would be incriminated. Did you know that the British lab FSS was actually a government-owned agency, and is not excluded that they got their fingers here as well, the government, to further eliminate Kate and Jerry McCann as suspects? Eventually, the FSS was closed down. All the samples stored will be reanalyzed and retested. I really do hope there will be some kind of closure this time. Not the same fiasco he has been since 2007. Officially, the reason for the closure was financial, but allegedly they provided wrong conclusions scientifically in hundreds of important cases. And thank you to Teresa, you know who you are, for this very useful information. There is also something else quite interesting that I would like to share. Amaral mentions that after the preliminary results from the lab, at some point, there's some information they receive. The McCanns are setting up an international alert system for missing children campaign. Obviously, this is a diversionary tactic. And I have to tell you my view on this. The McCanns are still being investigated, right? At this point, there are tons of people out there who believe that they had something to do with Maddie's disappearance, because obviously they've been in the press as being suspects, so people do change their opinions. So, what better time to choose for that campaign, for the international alert system? The whole world is watching as the events unfold, so I'm guessing this move of theirs had something to do with their press manager, Clarence Mitchell. This really smells like him. He probably went to them and said, "Oh, you know what? You have to do this. You look so good in people's eyes, like the most caring parents in the world. So much so that you're even setting up a system for missing kids. And oh my God, this system is international. Do you know how much positive reaction you'll get from this? People will forget all about you being made suspects and being investigated." And oh my God, you will not believe what else Amaral receives. Beirut, capital of Lebanon. Check this out. An Arab sheikh has a video of an orgy by other sheikhs on which it seems that Madeleine McCann can be recognized. He would be very much prepared to hand the video over to the British police in exchange for money. Does this sound familiar? The ransom email? It's not funny, but I'm laughing because yes, because it's just unbelievable the lengths some people can go to. I imagine someone just randomly coming across something like this while scrolling online God knows where, and then they come up with a brilliant idea and say, "Oh, you know what? We can use this to further derail the investigation. Doesn't matter, related or not, people will just buy it." Oh, the arrogance makes my blood boil, seriously. Interrogations. And you know what? I'm gonna say again about this Clarence Mitchell. He really has his stamp, in my opinion, because he was a politician's PR or whatever he was in politics with Gordon Brown and whatever. It doesn't matter. But it seems like, just as a general member of public, I'm not interested in politics whatsoever. I never watch politics on TV. I never read about politics, whatever with politics. But it seems to me like a tactical political move. Why am I saying this? Because, look, for example, let's take Epstein, for 1 second here. And Ghislaine or Ghislaine, whatever she wants to be called, Maxwell. Okay, they discovered his island, they discovered his little black book, blah blah blah, he died, he killed himself or whatever he did. Now she is arrested, now it's everywhere in the news around the world that there will be the documents released to the public, high profile individuals, politicians and whatnot are in those documents. And then all of a sudden the news stop about Ghislaine Maxwell and about the high profile people and politicians and whatever. And then we get again to the coronavirus news, spreading again. This, I think, it's a derailing tactic like with the McCanns. That's why I'm saying that it smells like Clarence Mitchell got his hands in there and came up with all these brilliant ideas. Because maybe you don't know, but behind closed doors, whilst the media is publishing only about the coronavirus, so many high profile people have been arrested and trialed for child abuse or whatever was happening on that island. And they have been trialed and they have been arrested, and there were tons of people. But did you hear about those in the news? No, you didn't. Because they again fooled us. Yeah, my opinion. Please correct me if I'm wrong. Let's get back to the day of the interrogations. So interrogations at this point are over, and Amaral is asking one of his British colleagues if anything came out of the sheik's story. And guess what? As it turns out, this video was sent to this British colleague in February or March 2007. Oh my god. Way before Maddie's disappearance. So, tell me, who goes to such lengths to make people believe Madeleine is still alive? So, if I get this right, the police received this video in February or March, and then, all of a sudden, this video resurfaces somehow out of nowhere just when the McCanns are investigated. Oh. So then, in my opinion, someone from the police had access to the video and sent it to the PJ to show that Madeleine is alive, which would mean the McCanns won't need to be investigated anymore, which would mean Maddie was abducted. Fits perfectly, just as it should. The only thing they haven't thought about though was the date of the video was sent in the first place, or perhaps whoever sent it to the PJ didn't think that British colleague would speak about it, right? Or that Amaral will take any notice of it. All these people, they think we are kids. They feed us fantasies and stories and fairy tales, and we should believe these are all real. These people are insane, vile people. They really are, in my opinion. Okay. Blood is boiling. Blood pressure down. The last thing I want to touch today is the monitoring system that the McCanns had. I don't know if you guys knew this, but as it turns out, the Tapas 7 and the McCanns had two lists which described hour by hour how the evening of 3rd of May went. The two lists are in fact written down on the cover of a kid's sticker album which possibly belonged to Madeleine. O'Brien is the one handing over the lists to the first police on the scene. So, let me get this straight. They used the missing child's book to write on and then tear apart? Seriously? Is this how much they cherish the memory of Madeleine? There was no paper, no tissue, or whatever else existed there, only a child book to write on? Oh, come on, this is really disgusting. So, here is the first list. 8:45 p.m. all assembled at poolside for food. 9 p.m. met Oldfield listens at all three windows. 5 ABD, all shutters down. 9:15 p.m. Jerry McCann looks at room A and a question mark. Door open to bedroom. 9:20 p.m. Jane Tanner checks 5D. Sees stranger walking carrying a child. 9:30 p.m. O'Brien in 5D, poorly daughter. 9:55 p.m. 10 p.m. alarm raised after Kate. And at the bottom of this list is the name Gerald in block capital letters. You know, I have to give obviously my opinion again on this. To me, this looks just like a shopping list which you write in a hurry so you don't forget what you need to buy. In this case, what you need to say, obviously. You know, like when you scribble something quickly, oh, let me just, you know, write this down before I forget it, because then when I'm gonna get to the shop I won't remember anymore. So yeah, pretty much something like this. And the fact that Jerry's name is written on the list can mean that this list was meant for Jerry to read, memorize, do what? This annoys me so bad. But then also I'm thinking that this might have been for Jerry, so he would be the one to explain everything, because in my view he's the strongest one of the whole group. He's the most recollected and the most cold and the most cynical person in my view. Yes. And this really does annoy me really bad. And then we also have the second list, right? 8:45 pool. Matt returns 9905. Listened all three, all shutters down. Jerry 9:10, 9:15 into room, all well. Did he check? Question mark, question mark. 9:20, 9:25. Jane checked 5D. Sis stranger, I child. 9:30 Russ plus the word is score through. Matt check all three. 9:35 Matt checks door sis twins. 9:50 Russ returns. 9:55 Kate Madeline. 10 p.m. alarm raised. You can clearly tell the writing is irregular. A lot of mistakes there, question marks, as if whoever wrote this was confused and or wrote it down in a hurry. But why in the first list 5A is left 45 minutes without being checked? I think that the existence of these two lists prove that they were in disagreement with what to say, so it makes sense, so it fits in their story. And then yeah, the 45 minutes gap, of course, when they said it's like everybody checked every 30 minutes. If it would be the 45 minutes gap, then it would be too long, isn't it? And then the apartment wouldn't be checked for 45 minutes. So yeah, or it can also be that they might not have had enough time to make sure that the timeline or the list or whatever makes sense. In both lists, however, it's clear that Jane had to have seen a man carrying a child, which is essential and the only statement which can hold this story of abduction together. And we are at the end of our video. That's all for me for today, guys. In my next video I will go into more detail on Jane Tanner's never-ending version of events and ever-changing statements. So if you want to watch my next video, if you are not subscribed, please make sure you subscribe by hitting the red button below. Also make sure you hit the notification bell and you will know when my next video is uploaded. Many thanks for watching, everyone. Take care, stay safe. Bye bye.